I knew a dog named Maggie, used to follow me around my hometown. She looked like a wolf, she laughed like a hyena, she cast no shadow on the ground. All the stray dogs in my neighborhood barked and howled as I passed by, but Maggie never showed me her teeth, she never left my side. Maggie the mud is frightening someone for those that do not know. And Maggie the mud ain't nothing but a reflection of my soul.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Fueled by Joy podcast. And this week we're going to change it up a little bit. We were concentrated on the hounds last week and the week before with episodes 2 and 3. And episodes 3 and 4, we're going to switch it up a little bit, and we are going to talk about competing with English setters with Mr. Shaun Rydl. It was a fantastic interview. You're getting ready to listen to part 1. There are a ton of parallels between what I do competing with treeing Walker Coonhounds and what Shaun does competing with setters. And so I think everybody's going to get a good bit of information out of this that can really cross over. So it was a fantastic interview. It was fun to do. Shaun was very gracious, and I thank him a lot for letting me sit down with him. So without further ado, here is Mr. Shaun Rydl from the Buzzard Roost.
Puppies bring everyone joy, right? So why not bring joy to them? Our puppy formula is made with 515 kcals per cup to help your pups gain weight at a healthy rate. Added B vitamins are also used so the pups can thrive. Our formula consists of 6 key ingredients: omega-3 and 6 fatty acids to help keep their coat and skin shiny and beautiful, zinc and vitamin E for a healthy immune system, and glucosamine and chondroitin for healthier joints. Over 75 years with no recalls and 100% American made, you can rest assured that you are feeding your dog the best bang for your buck. Find a Joy dealer near you. Call 800-245-4125 or visit joydogfood.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Fueled by Joy podcast. And today we're going to change it up. We're going to be talking English setters and all thing bird dog with Mr. Shaun Rydl from, is this Indianola?
Yeah, I think I'm the southernmost Indianola address.
Yeah, we're out in the middle of nowhere, but we'll consider it Indianola, Iowa. And Shaun, I met you through Joy Dog Food. You're a Joy customer and stuff, and I started coming up here. And normally I don't deliver dog food. You know, I'm a salesman. I don't deliver it, but I have a soft spot for English setters. You know, I used to own some English setters, and I always liked them, and I seen yours, and I thought, I'm going to go up and visit with that guy every chance I get. So,
I'm glad you did.
Yeah, Shaun's been gracious enough to join us on the podcast, and I want to talk a little bit about everything, but this is the Working Dog podcast, and setters are working dogs, and matter of fact, your old dog's over here. You can probably hear him on the mic huffing and puffing. 16, you say he's almost 16?
He's almost 16.
That's crazy.
He's a 10-time field trial, shoot-to-retrieve field trial champion, and he won the Midwest Regional Championship twice, and I think he's got 3 or 4 national Final Fours.
So that's why he gets to lay in the floor in the house?
He can lay anywhere he wants.
That's right.
I think he sired 119 puppies.
What's his name?
Skipper's Bandit. His name's
Bandit.
Yep.
Well, Skipper's Bandit too. All our coon dogs go back to a dog called Nocturnal Skipper too. So I knew I liked that dog for a reason. But Shaun, when did you get your start with just? Did you start out with setters?
Yep. Probably back in the late '80s, and we always had dogs that we could pheasant hunt with growing up as kids, just mutt dogs and stuff like that. And there were pheasants everywhere. I grew up in southwest Iowa. But I started out looking for a Brittany. Actually, a friend of mine had a Brittany Spaniel, and I thought, man, those pointing dogs are way cool. I love how they stand there and point the bird, and you go in and kick it up, and found a lady that had a litter of setter puppies for $75, and they were papered, American field papered, and I bought one. And
are you glad you got the setter instead of the Brittany?
Yeah, he
not to offend any of the Brittany owners out there.
That first dog I had probably taught me more about pointing dogs than I learned anywhere else. Yeah. He wasn't a field trial dog. I didn't field trial him or anything like that. But man, I shot thousands and thousands of birds over him.
Did you have many quail back then?
Yeah. CRP was, southern Iowa was covered up in CRP then, and you could hunt anywhere, and there were birds everywhere, and that's what we did. In '91, I did some research and found a field trial bred little setter female from Bob Merkel up in Jessup, Iowa, and she was my first trial dog. Kind of the mid '90s, I was around some guys.
Was she just trial bred, or did you compete with her too?
No, I competed with her. That's about when I started competing.
Because one thing, and I talked to you about this before the podcast, is when it comes to competing with hounds at coonhound events, I like to think I know it all. Nobody knows it all, but I'm pretty well versed in that area. And I've quail hunted and pheasant hunted and upland hunted over setters quite a bit, but I've never competed with them. I've never been able to watch a trial. I've never been to go see a trial. In the coonhounds, which this is debatable. There's competition dogs and there's just regular old coon dogs, meat dogs they call them. Is it kind of like that with setters?
Yeah, and I think all bird dog.
Yeah,
I think all bird dog breeds are that way. You got your meat dogs and you got your, the dogs that are going to make trial dogs, and you can breed the best trial dog to the best trial dog, and you may not get trial dogs, and you may get half a litter that's good and the other half that ain't, and then a lot of it depends on whose hands they get into.
Yeah, that's the same way with hound pups too. Yeah. What's the difference between what you'd call a meat dog and a trial dog? The main difference?
Probably, a trial dog should be really classy, carry themselves well. Speed is a factor. I run national shoot to retrieve trials, so the dogs are scored by a judge on 0 to 100 for their style, how they point the bird, and they're scored on their retrieve, how nice the retrieve is. It should be a fast and snappy, classy retrieve. I like a setter that's got a high cracking tail, looks good on the ground, runs light on their feet, got their head up, not their head on the ground, fast, snappy.
Do you want their head? I'm gonna ask a bunch of stupid questions, so be ready. But do you want their head up when they're pointing?
Yeah, I prefer their head up.
Yeah. Do the judges usually prefer that too?
Yep. You'll get scored down for if their head's low or their tail's low.
Really?
High on both ends is usually a very good thing.
Yeah, because I know like with Lamar, one of my pups, real high, straight tail, high head, and everybody oohed and awed. And Kobe, my older dog, man, he'd be zooming through there, and his face would be 4 or 5 inches off the ground, and his tail curled, pretty much straight back, and everyone, yeah. So that's why I see why they're thinking of that now.
Yeah, and I see it. I judge a lot of trials too, and I see it all the time. A guy will come out there and he might do well. He might have a dog that can find birds and find them fast and really do a nice job, but just doesn't have the style.
Yeah.
Runs with a low tail, points with a low tail, not real intense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the special dogs, have it all.
Yeah.
And they're few and far between, as you know, just like coon dogs.
Yeah.
The ones that are fast can look good on the ground, high cracking tail, snappy, high on both ends when they're pointing. Stand there and point, not move a muscle. That dog can't move till the handler gets there and flushes the bird for the dog.
As far as, because I know in coonhounds, and we're going to go back and forth, compare, and I know I can't help myself, but the handler plays a huge role in how that dog is going to score throughout a cast. And I assume it's got to be the same way with these dogs too.
It is. The handler plays a big part of it. Not only in your preparation. I was just talking to a guy today, Terry Prenticehill, who probably taught me more about setters than
Yeah.
anybody. And, he's an older gentleman now in his mid-70s, and I was talking to him this morning on the phone.
Also a Joy customer.
Yeah, I was talking to him on the phone, and, I study. I'm a study. I study the game, study everything. But I study tendencies of my dogs. I study tendencies of other people's dogs. Because you're running against another guy. You're running against one other dog in the field, and the object is to put the most birds on the card that you can. But I study tendencies of other dogs. I study tendencies of my dogs. Study tendencies of the judges judging you. That all has to play into how you handle that field.
Yeah.
It's not just walking up there and turning your dog loose and letting them do it. You got to be. It's a team effort.
Yeah, and so it's just when you say in a field and you're competing against another, just you and one other dog and one other handler.
Yep. In a national shoot to retrieve trial format, there'll be 32 dogs in a field during the day. There'll be 16 half-hour braces.
Yeah.
And they put. When it's your brace, they put you and your brace mate in a blind, and a bird handler goes out on that field and puts 5 quail out on that field.
And so you guys are competing over the same birds.
Yeah, and it's usually about a 40-acre field.
Right.
And they could be scattered out wherever.
Yeah.
And you go to the line and you're running for a half an hour, and there's a judge following each one of your dogs, scoring your dogs.
I got you.
So, you're not only competing against the rest of the field that day, you're mainly competing against that brace mate.
Like, say if you win your brace, is it a win and advance type deal, or is it just a pure overall score at the end of the deal?
There are trial formats that are set up to be beat your brace mate trials. Normally, the weekend trials around here, you're competing against those other 32 dogs.
I see.
At the end of the day, they're going to place first, second, and third.
You've got to beat that brace mate to get a high enough score, though, to where your overall score is enough to make a difference at the end.
And I have seen it where maybe there's a bird buildup or something, and sending's that good. And I've seen 2 placements come out of the same brace before.
I see.
But
it's pretty rare.
It's a numbers game.
Yeah.
I mean, you're wanting to find as many birds as you can to put as many finds and retrieves on that scorecard as you can.
When you started competing, what was the first dog that you started competing with in the shoot retrieve stuff?
It was that little dog I bought in 1991.
Right.
Her registered name was Turkey Creek Jetta. And she was actually a little chestnut setter, real small female, only weighed about 30 pounds. And she was fast and snappy and looked real good on the ground. And I was brand new in the game.
Yeah.
I mean, I look back now and when I started out, I think, man, I knew everything about it, and I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
I started trialing like 95, 96, right in there. And I got my first trial placement with her of any dog was in 1996, and that was a big deal for me back then. But
how many did you have to go to before you got a placement?
I probably ran, I don't know, I probably ran half a dozen, 8 or 10 trials before I got a placement.
That's pretty good, ain't it, to run 8 or 10 and then get one? I mean, I don't know. It may not.
now I take a brand new dog to a trial and place him the first brace. She was good.
Yeah.
I mean, she was way better than I was probably. I won the '99 Midwest Regional Championship with her, and that's probably what got me the most hooked.
So she would have been an 8-year-old dog then.
Yep.
Is that pretty common for them older dogs to still do well, 8, 9, 10 years old?
You see a lot more setters running at that age than you do Brittany's and short hairs and pointers for some reason. I think all those other breeds start earlier.
Yeah.
The setters seem a little bit later to mature than some of those other breeds, but it seems like you can run them longer.
Yeah, there's a parallel with coonhounds there too, because I know I can only speak for treeing walkers, but there are some strains of treeing walkers that are late starters, late bloomers, and they seem to win late in their career, where some of the others are kind of flash in the pan. They're done when they're 4 or 5 years old. One of those strains being mine.
She was the first dog that I went to a national event with that year, and actually finished 5th in that national event out in Indiana.
Really? How many people are competing in an event like that?
I think there was that would have been probably like a 128 dog event. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
That's what I think hooked me
the
most in the game. I was ready to get dogs and field trial after that.
When did you Because, I mean, I've seen your puppies there a couple of weeks ago. I stopped and visited. And I've looked at some of your dogs down at your kennels and stuff like that. So you've been raising dogs for a while, too. When did you start, raising puppies and getting them to compete?
I did. She was the first female that I owned, and I had a couple litters of pups out of her.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I bought another dog. That's my third setter that I bought was from Terry Prentice-Hill.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the start of the line that I have now.
Yeah.
Was that.
What year was that? That was back in 98, 99, right?
I bought her in 94, actually.
Yeah, I got you.
And her name was Foxy. And Terry Prentice-Hill's got a great line of Cashmaster bred setters. And, when I started out, he was the man. You'd go to trial and he was winning everything.
Yeah.
And his dogs were super classy and they looked good on the ground. And he was a great handler. And I was a sponge around him. I hung around Terry as much as I could, learned as much as I could. And, I made a deal with her. He provided the stud dog, and we had a nice litter of pups.
Yeah.
And, that the litter of pups I had out here, they're 9 or 10 weeks old now.
Yeah.
Is actually out of one of those dogs. It was a frozen semen.
Really?
We've had
Oh, yeah,
semen.
you told me that. Yeah,
we've had semen. So that's how far back in the line we've went there with that frozen semen. So
what percentage, because, I mean, it's always a numbers game with any of these competing dogs, but you look at, say you take a pretty good stud like Terry's and a pretty good female like yours, and they're backed up by pretty good dogs, what percentage of those are going to make just a good meat dog, and then what percentage you think are going to excel in the field trial stuff? And, I mean, everybody, every now and then there's just a complete dud.
Yeah, and I think that varies, litter to litter. That litter that we're talking about right now, I mean, I think there were 7 puppies in there, and I think 4 or 5 of them ended up being nice trial dogs. I owned one and trialed her, and I ran one for another guy and trialed him, and the male was a 7-time champion, and the female I owned was a 3-time champion, and there was a couple others guys that maybe weren't champions, but they had some trial placements and stuff on them.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's pretty good. Yeah. Odds are, if they're stacked up genetically, that they got a pretty good shot.
That's sure where you got to start.
Yeah.
That's the foundation. Repeat breedings and good foundation stock are the keys, I think.
Just like anything, I think it's the same way. And Shorty Gorham's talking bucking bulls, and I'm talking coon hounds, and you're talking setters and stuff. Success breeds success usually. So I think it's the same way across all breeds.
I always say, I'm a livestock minded person. I grew up on a cattle and pig farm in Southwest Iowa, and that's the way we bred our cattle, and that's the way we bred our hogs, and you kind of use the same philosophies and the same practices in bird dogs.
Yeah. And now in hounds, we're going to spend a little more time on breeding here, but in hounds, line breeding it's been popular for a long time. Uncle niece crosses, grandfather, granddaughter crosses, things like that. Is that prevalent in setters too? Yeah,
and I think that's what made Terry's line of dogs so good. The Foxy dog that I had her mom was actually named NSTRA.
Yeah.
And she was bred to, she was a litter mate to Hard Times, and she was bred back to a son of Hard Times.
Mm-hmm.
So Terry had 3 or 4 of those litters where, he crossed her back to basically a nephew. Or
when you're looking at that line breeding, because from what I've seen of it, it's very great for keeping the things that you like. Yep. Say in a hound, you want a big mouth, and you want trackability, and you want these things, and you got all that. And if you line breed, you can keep it. But it also accentuates some of their faults over time.
Correct.
Does it do the same thing? You've seen about the same thing?
And what some people don't realize, they think just because they've got a great male dog that they can breed it, and that's what they're going to get. There's prepotent sires and there's not prepotent sires.
Right.
I've been lucky with this Bandit dog. He is prepotent sire.
Yeah.
I could breed him to a collie, and he's going to throw a nice silver setter pup.
Yeah.
He throws a double masked dog, usually a spot at the base of the tail. He's never thrown an orange puppy.
Yeah.
He's even breeding him to an orange dog.
Right.
He's what I'd consider a prepotent sire.
So whatever's in him genetically is stronger than pretty much everything he's going to cover.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with the potent, in my opinion. There's nothing wrong with the prepotent versus potent. If you got a good female that
Right.
you really like, and you want to keep most of her traits, if not all, and you find a sire that's not really strong as far as covering a dog's traits up, that's a good mix to make there too.
Yeah. I'm at the point in breeding right now where I'm breeding a lot of his daughters.
Yeah.
And have been out crossing and line breeding both.
Yeah.
To see what I'm getting there.
Yeah, that way you can, because in certain strains, like there's a strain of dog that crosses well on one certain strain of dog but doesn't on another.
Right.
And it's the same way, I assume, with all dogs, But when we're talking about you're breeding them, you're raising them, you're training them, you're competing with them. The full pull, Grand Slam, doing everything with them. So you've got a pretty good litter of pups. They're 6, 7, 8 weeks old. They're out here at Buzzard's Roost, and they're running around, and they're doing puppy stuff. Is there anything that you look for in them pups when they're real little as far as what you like to see? And because you're going to keep one back most of the time.
Usually I do.
Yeah.
I'm usually looking for that bold puppy, the first one to do stuff, the first one to figure out I got those swinging doors. The first one to figure out a swinging door. The first one to figure out how to get out of the pen. First one, stuff like that.
What do you look for as they progress? Because, what's the average age that a dog's going to start trialing as far as pointing dogs go?
I think setters, you got to have them at least a year old, maybe even 2, right in there. It's very rare to see one under a year old trialing. You got to let them mature, and the pressure that you put on them to stand birds and to stand walking birds, to stand the pressure of 4-wheelers around them, all that stuff, they got to be able to take that. So.
I want to get into preparing for that pressure too, and how you guys go about that. But how do you start? When do you start putting them on live birds usually?
I like I'll let those puppies pull wing feathers out of a quail and let them chase quail around, let them and stuff when they're little. I don't put any hard pressure on a dog usually until they're at least 6 months old.
Yeah.
Usually 6 months old, see how they're progressing. Maybe start putting some pressure on. I call all that play training.
Yeah.
We're out in the field and we got some pigeons out there. We use pigeons a lot.
Yeah.
Let them point and chase pigeons and increase their prey drive.
I love seeing litters of pointing dogs that are babies all pointing something.
Yeah.
That's the coolest thing. They say genetics this and genetics that, and that some dogs are only predisposed of things because of their environment or something like that. But until you see a litter of 6-week-old puppies all point and back and everything at the same time, you realize that, that's just bred in them.
Knock on wood, I've never had one not point yet.
Yeah.
I've had setters for 34 years now. And I tell people, you go a lot of places and a guy will have a wing on a string on a fishing pole and he's throwing it down in front of the pups and they're all locked up there on point. And I don't do that. Yeah. Because I don't want them sight pointing.
Right.
Or wanting to go in and look at the bird. And I know they're going to point.
Yeah. I never even thought of the sight pointing thing because I done it. I was an idiot too. I'm over here with a quail wing on a string and just watching my puppies point and thought it was cool.
It is. It's so neat to see.
It is neat to see, but it probably wasn't doing them any good.
There's a lot of guys will do it when they're little just to see them point or see how they're going to hold their tail or something like that, and that's all well and fine. But I think you can overdo some of that.
Oh yeah.
And I think you can overdo it on anything. I mean, you can get a puppy bird shy or anything like that.
Yeah.
I socialize more than anything.
Yeah.
I want my dogs to want to be with me, to like me, to want to be around me.
When do you start hauling them around the truck, doing all that stuff? I assume when they're real young.
As soon as those puppies are born, I got my hands on them.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the same way with mine.
Yeah, I'm handling them. I'm talking to them. You've been down to my kennel. anybody's welcome to come
Yeah.
to my kennel and play with my puppies. You walk in there, they all want to be with you.
Yeah,
They wanna
trust
be-
me, do it. It's worth
Yeah,
it.
yeah, they want to be. They want
You're
to
gonna have people. You're gonna have coon hunters knocking on your door at 2 a.m. Hey, I want to see your English setter puppy.
Everybody's welcome. Everybody's welcome here. Well, I grew up coon hunting.
Yeah, yeah.
My
You
dad,
told me that.
My dad and my grandpa were coon hunters, and we always had coon dogs. So I wouldn't mind going coon hunting.
Well, I'll come get you. You got to take me bird hunting,
yeah,
though, too.
that's a deal.
What? So you're getting a dog. You've got him started. He's a year and a half old, say, or a year old, and you're thinking, I'm going to get this dog ready to get in a trial. He's got the talent that I need. He looks good on the ground. He's quick. He's all these things that you think you can do well with in a trial. How do you prepare him for that pressure? I mean, can you simulate it?
I'm a firm believer in wild bird hunting
Yeah.
a lot, and
Yeah.
I do wild bird hunt a lot. I'm not just a trial guy. My dogs are trial dogs. They're wild bird dogs.
Yeah.
They're family pets. They're everything.
Yeah.
Wild bird hunting is still the best thing because you got a collar on them. You can make corrections in the field.
Yeah.
But here at home, we buy a lot. I buy a lot of birds. I
Yeah.
buy a lot of pen raised quail. It's repetition. It's it's training and repetition. Out here, I've got 30 acres here where I live, and it's just set up for training dogs, and I practice here, and getting them to stand. You don't want to move.
What do
them.
you mean by? I mean, you're just talking about holding the point. Rock solid,
Yeah.
steady.
Yep.
How do you go about getting them to do that?
These,
I mean, I assume most of it's genetic, and
Yeah.
they're going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
But how do you go about reinforcing it? To where you
Yeah.
make sure they do it all the time.
we use the belly collar a lot. When we wool break them.
Yeah.
And use the belly collar a lot to get them to stand. That's been a great
Yeah.
tool. The electronic collar around the belly. We wool break them off the wool post with a rope around their belly. Get them used to standing, and then reinforce it with the electronic collar, and then. Usually, all these shoot to retrieve dogs, we're force breaking them to retrieve.
Yeah.
In other
I was
words,
going to ask you
yeah.
about that. If I assume they were all force fetched.
Yeah. There's not very many that run that are just natural retrievers. The problem with the natural retriever is they naturally quit retrieving when they want to.
Yeah.
We force break everything that we're going to compete
Yeah.
with, and I like to put a good solid bird season on them before I trial them.
How hard do you guys hunt during the season? Quite a bit.
I do. I spend a whole week in Montana hunting.
Where do you hunt at in Montana?
In northeast Montana, on the Fort Peck Indian Reservation.
Yeah.
We hunt sharp-tailed grouse, huns, and pheasants, and we shoot a lot of birds.
Yeah.
We see a lot of birds. I
I
wish
used-
it wasn't so far away.
I do too. I used to go up to, where Havre is.
Yep.
Chinook is east of Havre, and then my buddies have a big ranch south of Chinook, about 30 miles in between the Milk River and the Missouri Breaks. Well, they're really right on the north end of the breaks, and the Sharpie and the Hun population out there was wild
Yeah,
when we were out there.
It's been really, really good the last 2 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I haven't been out there in probably 7 or 8 years now. I need to get back out there one of these days.
I'd love to figure out a way to spend 6 weeks out there
Yeah.
instead of just 1 week out
Yeah.
there. I hunt a lot around here. I've got a lot of land where I grew up to still hunt, and usually try to get out to the sand hills in Nebraska for at least a weekend trip out there.
Yeah.
And then we get down into western Kansas in January, hunting out there. Pretty good pheasant populations.
Yeah.
And usually the weather's good that time of year. We can get out of here.
They got so much walk-in hunting and stuff like that. Do you hunt a lot of walk-in, or you got some private ground
We've
out
got
there?
we've got a lot of private ground
Yeah.
in western
Yeah.
Kansas.
I know, I think it was 2009 or 10, and they just had a quail explosion out. We were around, trying to think of the name of the town now. It'd been northwest of Russell a little ways. But, man, they were quail in them walking hunting areas everywhere, and everybody was out there with their Labradors pushing all that big switchgrass, and these little bitty fence rows and stuff like that were full of quail. Nobody'd ever touch them.
Yeah.
And we'd slide in there with a couple pointers and a couple setters, and, man, just shot the crap out of them.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. But anyway, enough glory days.
Yeah, and when Texas is good, we'll go to Texas
Yeah.
in January and February.
Where do you hunt at down there?
In the Panhandle,
Yeah.
around Clarendon,
Yeah.
Canyon and Clarendon.
I said I got a buddy that goes down around Dalhart. Used to go down there around Dalhart. What's it like down there as far as terrain and all that stuff? I've never got to hunt it.
It's ranch land with I call it short mesquite,
Yeah.
maybe mesquite that's 8-10 foot tall,
Oof.
and not real thick.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
just kind of spread out.
Yeah.
It's rangeland.
Yeah.
But, 2015, 16, right in there, it was way good down there.
Really?
I mean, you could move 30 coveys a day.
No, 30 coveys a day.
You'd move a covey and you'd go look for singles, move another covey.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's anywhere like that right now.
Yeah. The quail population is so volatile.
Yeah.
I know it's like that way here, and everywhere there's quail, it seems like they're here one day and gone the next.
Yep.
But what about, because I mean, these trials. All right, folks. Thank you for listening to this episode with Shaun. A lot of great info there. We got even more coming up with Shaun next week. So I want to thank everybody for listening. Please remember to subscribe, leave us a good rating on whatever platform you're using to listen to the podcast. If you have any questions about Joy Dog Food, just go to joydogfood.com, shoot us an email, phone numbers on there. My contact information is easily found as well. You guys can dial me right up at any time. So, yeah, thanks again to Shaun for sitting down with me. And, man, I tell you what, he's got some beautiful dogs. I'm looking forward to hunting with them, and I'm looking forward to putting this next podcast out next week. So I hope you all tune in, and make sure and go to joydogfood.com to get fueled by joy.
Maggie the mutt's always down in a rut, looking for some bone that she buried. Maggie the mutt don't get scars, only cuts. She loves me and will not share me. Oh, she loves me and will not share me. Those that do not know, Maggie the mud ain't nothing but a reflection of my soul. Oh, Maggie the mud's always down in a rut, looking for some bone that she buried. Maggie the mud don't get scars, only cuts. She loves me and will not share me. Oh, she loves me and will not share me. Oh, she loves me and will not ever share me.